It's the 24th of January 2018. I'm Paul Whittaker. I'm at the Camaraderie in Derby and talking once again to
Tony Borrington.
Well, Tony, we've talked a little bit about your playing career. But since you retired from playing, you obviously went into teaching, and then you've retired from that, and you're now one of the quite regular people that appear on the cricket talking scene, chatting about your stories and memories of playing cricket. How did you actually get into doing that?
Well, I decided that it was something I'd like to try doing. Obviously, it was a case really, would I have the content, would I have the stories that would appeal to cricket societies, cricket dinners? Obviously, having been a headmaster in a private school, being able to stand up and deliver it wasn't concerning me too much. It was whether I could get a sort of a content that would appeal to people. And I started off talking to probably the best guy on the cricket speaking circuit, which is Jeff Miller. And what he said to me was, and I never forgot this, he said, you have to tell stories against yourself. Never be critical of other players, but you need to tell stories about against yourself. He said, because most of all, people want to know not the good things about your career, because they can read those. They want to know what went wrong. And then he paused and he said to me, and you've got lots to go at in your career, haven't you? Lots of stuff went wrong for you. And so, based on that really good conversation with Jeff Miller, I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go. And it's just sort of evolved. The cricket societies are great audiences, though.
So you've got them on your side, and they want to hear about these things that happen. So, is there something that you can tell us, the sort of thing that goes down well at the cricket societies? Some of your stories.
I suppose, yeah. Just following on what I just said, most of the content of the things I say are things in my career that didn't quite go as well as you'd like them to have done, because they tend to appeal to people's humour. And I hit on a theme a couple of years ago where at a cricket society you'll normally talk for 45 minutes and then they'll do Q&A, the question and answer sessions. And somebody, a youngish guy, asked me what was the best sledge that I'd ever had when I played. And it threw me a little bit because, the great West Indians of the 70s, great West Indian fast bowlers, Holding, Marshall, Garner, Roberts, Sylvester Clarke, Van Den Holder, Hartley Lane, Ian Bishop, all these people never said a word to you.
These were people that you played against in county cricket.
Yeah, great fast bowlers. They didn't say a word to you. There was no point in which they would hit you with any verbal abuse, the likes of which you see now. And the only altercation I had with a West Indian was that Andy Roberts used to have this habit of following through at the end of his run-up and just sort of, he had quite a deadpan face, just sort of staring at the batsman. And Alan Hill and I were playing against him, and I'm pretty sure it was at Southampton. And he did this to me 3 times in an over, having bounced 2 of them, and he followed right through and looked at me, and some sort of false bravado took over. And I walked towards him, patted the pitch down, and looked back at him in the same way as looking at me. And he just very quietly did this, put his finger in his mouth, licked it, drew a cross on his forehead, and did that back to me. At which point Alan Hill was leaping up and down and saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? I said, I'm just showing him who's boss. He said, I think he knows who's boss, and it certainly isn't you. Anyway, so sledging was not something that was there at the start of my career, but it started to come in with the South Africans and the Australians. Eddie Barlow, who we had here, great captain, great leader. He was very clever at the sledging world. But the Australians were probably seen as the masters of it. And in 1977, I think it was, we played Australia at Chesterfield. And Eddie Barlow said to us before the game started, look, you young lads are going to see sledging today, the sorts of which you've not really seen. And he said, Rodney Marsh, their wicket-keeper, is the master, absolute master. So you'll need to just either rein yourselves in a little bit and not react, or if you're going to react, then you're going to have to be very clever, because these guys know exactly what they're doing. So that particular day I was batting middle order, and I went out to bat, and Rodney he's standing up to the wicket because there's a leg spinner, Kerry O'Keefe's bowling, and he started off by saying to me, hello, he said, how are you today? And I thought, it's a trap, I'm not going there. So I ignored him, and he then said to the other guys around him, this guy's ignoring me, that's not very nice, is it? And he said, does anybody know who he is? And they all went, oh, you know names, you know. And he said, can he play? And they all went, well, I don't know if he can play. Anyway, Kerry O'Keefe then came in to bowl at me, and he was a bit of a mystery leg spinner, certainly to me he was. And you know, a lot of our generation will remember a really famous Eric Morecambe joke where he's playing the piano with Andre Previn. And Andre Previn says to him, to Eric Morecambe, he said, you're playing all the wrong notes. And Eric said, I'm playing the right notes, but not necessarily in the right order. So bearing that story in mind, Kerry O'Keefe, a mystery leg spinner, is bowling at me, and I'm playing the right shot, but not necessarily to the right ball, because I can't spot his googly. Now, in our day, we were always told that if you couldn't spot, if you weren't sure of the googly, that's the one that's going to get you out. So make sure you're watching for the googly. So I played every ball as though it was a googly, covering it with bat and pad, and all 6 were leg spinners, and I missed all 6 of them. At the end of the over, Rodney said to me in a loud voice, he said, me and my mate Doug, that's Doug Walters, think that you are on the wrong pitch. He said, this is Derbyshire against Australia, the best team in the world. He said, there's another game going on the other side of town. Chesterfield Butchers are playing in the Wednesday afternoon shops league. If you hurry up, you'll just make the start. Anyway, I decided to battle on and recover from this and really try and work, and I struggled for another 3 or 4 overs. And Rodney then said to me, he said, do you know, he said, it's painful watching you bat, absolutely painful. He said, look, my mate Doug, who's at slip, he can read Kerry O'Keefe googly as soon as it leaves his hand. And we're going to give you a bit of help. Every time he bowls a googly, Doug's going to whistle like this. So when you hear a whistle, you know it's the googly. And I thought, oh yeah, as if I'm going to fall for that one. But he's bowling, and I'm suddenly realising, hang on, there's a whistle, and it was the googly. And I would play it on the onside, and then he'd bowl a few more, then there'd be another whistle, and I'd go on the onside. And I'm doing okay now, I'm feeling quite confident. And then he threw a wide one outside off stump, and there was no whistle, so I went to drive it, and it was the googly, and it came back through the gate, and I'm out. As I turned at Chesterfield to walk back towards the pavilion, Doug Walters and Rodney Marsh went, ask me another.
So, what was the sledging that happened at that time, was it more humorous than...
I don't know the sledging in the modern age, but it's become a big part of the game.
Yes.
And from what we see, you know, most players give it out and take it, and it's an accepted part of the game. It just wasn't around in the early 70s, you know. There's no way that I saw, having played against the likes of Colin Cowdrey and Ted Dexter and Tom Graveney, that any of our players ever sledged these guys, and nor did the bowlers around at the time sledge us back. It came in towards the end, mid to late 70s, but it did tend to be on a humorous basis. It did tend to be along the lines of trying to undermine you by making some comment that might make you think differently. For example, we played Worcester at Worcester, and Norman Gifford, the left-arm spinner who would bowl wide of the crease, was about to bowl his first ball at me, and he said in a loud voice, "Anyone want to have odds on this? The first ball I bowl at him will hit him on the pad." And they all sort of laughed, and he ran in and he bulleted it, hit me full on the pad, because what he was trying to say was I'd be quite nervous and I'd be looking to get my foot down the pitch quickly to him without playing it. So they're actually trying to stop you playing the way that you normally play. So it was quite subtle. It wasn't really aggressive, but look, it's become part of the modern game, and players seem to accept it on both sides.
Yes, it seems to be a more aggressive game now than it was. And was there a lot of chatter on the field between players, and not just in sort of sledging, but sort of, in a more camaraderie friendly way?
Not on the field,
No.
not on the field, but it was the norm for the away players. They would always meet up with the home players at the end of a game, and you would sit in a bar, because obviously there's no restrictions on having a pint at the end of the game in the 70s. I know that in this era that the amount of drinking is sort of very strictly controlled. So home and away teams would all sit round together chatting. And so I was lucky in that I've been on conversations, listened to Jon Snow when I was young, and then Eddie Barlow's friends like Barry Richards and Mike Proctor, you'd sit as part of a conversation with them. So it was off the pitch that there was just this closeness that I'm not sure exists today. I think that the players very much keep themselves separate in county cricket and don't necessarily socialise in the way that we did. We sometimes, if we played away, I'm reading Mike Brearley's new book at the moment, and he said that when Middlesex played against Notts at Trent Bridge, he stayed at Derek Randall's house because they'd played for England together. When I used to go down to London, once I stayed with Graham Barlow, who'd been at Loughborough University with me. And so those sorts of things will be unheard of now, that you actually stayed spending the night with one of the opposition, and then they brought you into the ground the next day. So that there was this bond off the field.
And do you think that was something that helped the players in their technique and in their playing by talking to other players?
It's possibly, but also, it helped in some ways to demystify, if you like, great players, to be able to listen to them and maybe some of the difficulties that they encountered, and realising that at the start of your career that maybe they'd been there before. The best example I can give you of that was that Barry Richards, world-class player, South African, good friend of Eddie Barlow, and after a game against Hampshire, I was part of a conversation, and I said to Barry Richards, one of my biggest concerns as a young player coming through was that I never felt quite the same one game to another. Sometimes I could be batting in the first innings and feel absolutely buzzing and do well, and go out in the second innings and it felt as though my boots were in concrete. And Barry Richards said to me, he said, "Yeah, that's just the same for me." He said, "I have that." He said, "I have to work out techniques to help me through the times when I don't feel that buzz." And I remember looking at him and thinking, but you're a world-class player. You can't possibly have the same worries and concerns that I have. But of course they do. But by mixing with them and listening to them, I felt it was a reassurance for me that it it just made sure that I looked at great players as humans as well, and having the same worries and insecurities that lesser players have.
Yeah, it does seem to be something that's gone out of the game now at first class level. That teams keeping themselves to themselves, really.
Yeah, and I think that in the modern era, you know, we used to have drinks brought into the changing room at the end of the game. You know, the 12th man, his job was to bring the drinks in. We'd all sit there. Most of the fast bowlers would have a pint at the end of the day, and of course our fast bowlers would be quite happy to drink 2 or 3 pints of an evening when we're away, and it didn't seem to make a difference to how many overs they bowled the next day. Now, with the fitness regimes that we have, I don't think players are drinking alcohol during a game, during match hours, or sorry, not during match hours, but out of match hours. So this lessens the chances of all getting together socially and sharing a pint or a drink in the bar afterwards, if the players actually are not allowed to drink in that way.
Yes, I think some of the clubs are trying to bring this back into the game, perhaps having one evening during the match that you'll meet up with the other teams.
Yeah.
But, I can remember watching games in the late 60s and 70s when the 12th men would walk along the old grandstand as it was and go to the grandstand hotel and then come back with a tray full of drinks, which would go into the dressing rooms.
I think the spin-off for our generation, Paul, is that you know, I love watching Derbyshire play cricket. I go to away games to watch them, and I love the 2020. Players from my generation, doesn't matter if it's Norman Gifford or Vic Marks or Jeff Cope up at Yorkshire, we're always pleased to see each other. We're always pleased to see each other. And because in our generation we socialised off the pitch together, nor did we get too involved in the verbal abuse side of it, there's no reasons for us not to be pleased to see each other again. And so there is this, and the Professional Cricket Association Past Players Day, seeing all the past players together, they were guys that you'd met socially over the years anyway. So I think whether that's in the modern game, I'm sure it will be eventually when players finish, that they'll socialise together, but there's limited opportunities, I think, for them now to socialise with the opposition during a game.
Yes, I suppose when you get together, you'll be talking to the bowlers about how you scored runs against them, and they'll be reminding you of how they used to get you out.
I think it's more the latter with me.
Well, I don't know. I've just been told you're in the top 50 of Derbyshire run scorers.
I know, it's all those games I've played, you see, Paul. Yeah. So
you wouldn't have played all that many if you'd not been a good player, Tony.
Well, I like to think that. Yeah, I'm very proud of the years I played and the guys I played with, and the 70s and 80s generation. Wonderful time to play.
Yeah, certainly was. Nice time to watch as well. Thank you very much, Tony. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.